Observational selection bias. Anybody ever heard of that before? It's a really powerful bias. Let me illustrate it. About 2003, I bought a brand new car. And last year, that car had 130,000 miles on it. And the repair bills were starting to be more common. And my wife, Kathy, and I agreed that it was time for an upgrade. I needed a good, reliable vehicle. So she said, well, honey, what do you want? I thought, good. This is my opportunity to be audacious. So I stroked my chin and I smiled and I said, I want something that'll go from 0 to 150 in the blink of an eye. And she smiled and said, okay. The next day she showed up in the driveway with a brand new white bathroom scale. And you know what? It was even better than I expected because I stepped on it. It went to 172 in the blink of an eye. But I did buy a brand new car last October. I bought a brand new bright red F-150 4x4. And as I drove that thing off the lot, I was amazed at how good a decision I'd made. Because amazingly enough, on the very same day that I bought my brand new bright red F-150 4x4, about 10,000 other people did too. It was an incredible coincidence. I'm looking around, they're everywhere. I couldn't believe how many there were. I mean, there had to have been at least twice as many bright red F-150 4x4s on the road that day as there were just the day before. And then I realized, nope, I'm not counting more F-150 4x4s. I am noticing more F-150 4x4s. That's called observational selection bias. You see, we will be drawn to what we focus on. That's the name of the game, observational selection bias. A few years ago, I was on some business in Omaha, Nebraska. And when I finished my business, I headed for home, and I stopped at Crete, Nebraska to stay there overnight because at Crete, Nebraska, they have an airport with a skydiving drop zone that I'd never been to, and I wanted to get to know those guys and introduce myself and stay free in the bunkhouse that they have there. If you're a skydiver, you can stay free. And maybe the next day do some skydiving. And so I stayed overnight. The next day was a beautiful day. And we decided this is a perfect day for skydiving. And we had enough skydivers there to make a load to make it worthwhile to go up in the sky. But there were two of us there that day that had never jumped at that drop zone before. And one of them was me, and the other one was a young guy who only had about 30 jumps, and he was a novice and still a little bit nervous about not wanting to make any mistakes. So he was kind of focused on that, not looking foolish. So it's customary for new guys to always get what's called an obstacle briefing. And an obstacle briefing is really pretty simple. Before they let you jump, they show you this aerial photograph of the drop zone. And they then point out all the things that you don't want to land on. It seems obvious, I know, but still it's a good practice, like power lines. That makes for a bad day. And the river, and trees, and buildings, and cars, and fence lines, and those kinds of things. But this is Crete, Nebraska. And it's wide open. In fact, it's the most wide open landing area at any drop zone I've ever jumped at. I mean, there are thousands and thousands and thousands of square feet that you can choose from to land, and you'd be just fine, except there's just one obstacle in this obstacle briefing, just one. And it's really kind of small. It was smaller than this room, just half the size of this room, a little clump of plum trees, a little plum thicket, kind of in the drop zone area, but off to one side. It wasn't that big. So this new guy and I, we took note of that, and we got on the plane, and on the way up, riding to altitude to 12,000 feet, I'm doing my usual thing. I kind of close my eyes, and I visualize the skydive, and I think about that aerial view of the landing area, and I'm thinking, just land in the open. Land in the open. But the other guy has a little different thing going on in his head. He doesn't want to mess up, and so he is thinking about that aerial view of the drop zone, and he's thinking, don't hit the thicket. Don't hit that thicket. All the way up. At 12,000 feet, the pilot opened the door. We all jumped, had a nice skydive, free fall, about 55 seconds down to 3,000 feet. I looked around, make sure everything was clear. I opened my parachute, looked up, checked it, make sure it was good. And then I looked down and got my bearings, picked out the place where I wanted to land, and I focused on that. The other guy, however, he opened his parachute, made sure it was good, looked down to get his bearings, and he picked out the thing he wanted to avoid, that plum thicket. And he focused on that. We both hit our target. It was unbelievable. I watched him go in. I'm thinking, what are you doing? He didn't get hurt, but he landed right smack in the middle of that plum thicket. Here's why. It was the only thing in his vision. Don't hit the thicket. Don't hit the thicket. I'm coming down under canopy and I'm thinking, land in the open, land in the open. He's coming down under the canopy and he's going, don't hit the thicket, don't hit the thicket, don't hit the thicket, don't hit the, I'm hitting the thicket. I'm sorry. You know, that day he earned a new nickname. You know, if in the skydiving community, if you mess up and everything is okay, you get a nickname. Now when he shows up at the drop zone, they see him coming and they say, look, here comes W. As in George W. Bush. When we focus on something, we transfer our gravity to it, and it draws us in. That's how this works. Whatever you focus on gets a gravity that draws you toward it. So here's how you can use observational selection bias. Give your vision gravity. How do you do that? Number one, describe it to yourself. Number two, write it down. Flesh it out. Give it details. Number three, find some photograph or object or drawing or whatever to symbolize that vision. Something that you can transfer your gravity to it and then put that object someplace where you see it every day. Every day. You know, a lot of successful people, they use this very thing and they don't even realize they're doing it. They're just doing it intuitively. But if you will find an object that will symbolize your detailed vision and put it where you see every day, here's what's going to happen. Your observational selection bias will kick in. You're going to go by and see that multiple times a day, and then here's what will happen. Every day, day by day, you're going to begin to notice little opportunities to take steps toward your vision that you never noticed before. You're going to start to notice people in your life who might have something to contribute to you reaching your vision, who might have knowledge that you can use, who you might be able to partner with to help you reach your vision. You're going to notice those people, and you've never noticed them before. Give your vision gravity, and it will draw you in.